All right, hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to Gospel Evangelism. My name is Jason, and this is my wife, Stephanie.
Hey.
Kind of a quiet hello there.
Mm-hmm.
All good. But yeah, so this is episode 2, and I think we have some interesting topics here today. We're gonna talk a little bit about, like, there's been a lot of chatterbox about that you haven't read or heard a lot about. I have presented it to you, but there is a calendar that was created, it was titled "Conservative Dads, Real Women of America," and on the cover of it is a bikini-clad female. So I recently got on Twitter X, and with the Gospel Evangelism, I created an account. So go follow us over. It's G_evangelism at G_evangelism. Over on Twitter now. But I just followed a bunch of Christian accounts, some that I knew on YouTube and other personalities. So I started getting a feed going of stuff. And all this week there's been, and I don't think we're going to do this each week. We're not going to try to find the trending topic and talk about it. But I thought there was enough sort of different angles that we could take on this particular topic to talk about. But I even when I shared it, I put a little graphic over the lady that's in her bikini on the cover of the calendar, just to not have anyone, try to get anyone to stumble. But anyway, so just on the onset of it, what are your thoughts with having the term conservative intertwined with a calendar that is targeted to dads, which are, if they're conservative, typically they're likely going to be married men, and this will be targeted to hang up in the garage and maybe the kitchen. I don't know. It just seems weird to have the term conservative and then provocatively posed women in it. What are your thoughts?
Right. So, it says conservative dads. It doesn't say Christian dads.
Facts.
Okay. Just because somebody is a conservative thinker, if they live their life primarily that way, that does not mean that they are Christians. Okay? So that's kind of where my first thought goes. Now, on the flip side of that, probably the majority of conservative people are also going to be claiming religion or Christianity or something.
Right.
You know what I mean? Whether or not they are truly Christians and truly have, gotten saved and given their life over to Jesus Christ. That's a whole nother thing. But I find it odd and weird, and obviously wouldn't want you to come home with this or be gifted to you, by somebody.
Yeah.
We wouldn't gift it to other people.
We wouldn't spend dollars on it.
Right. I would be curious whose idea it was, why they thought it was a good idea.
And even you made a good point, how it was actually pitched to the women that were now being on Twitter. A lot of the models have been tagged, or the conservative women that were models in the calendar have been tagged, and they're starting to now come out with statements or talking points about why and who. So, but like you said, she made a good point off camera that it would be interesting to find out how exactly this was pitched. I also think it was called Right Beer Company or something. So it was a beer company.
Okay.
So,
okay.
And it was a
beer company that is going after the conservative America, right, because you told me about this just kind of in conversation through the week. But outside of that, didn't know anything else. Don't really know anything else.
You haven't researched it or anything?
Sitting down to say, okay, this is what we're talking about today. He's got a quote over here.
One of the models, I'll put it up on the screen.
Yeah.
One of them is Sarah Gonzalez. I don't mean to call her out by name, but this is just one of the models.
And it's on Twitter, so
it's on Twitter. Yeah. So, but and this was in reply to something she posted on a tweet, and it said, "It is not and never was for specifically married men or dads. Listen, the name on the calendar says Conservative Dads, Real Women of America. Mm-hmm. So completely, utterly false on that. But I will say also
But that's why I was saying we don't know how it was pitched to her. So True. She said it is not and never was. So maybe how it was pitched to her, it wasn't supposed to be,
It was
put
just
out there for dads or whatever.
right.
So
It was just a beer company
Yeah.
that was a right wing conservative type of brand.
yeah.
They said let's do the prettiest women, conservative women we can find.
Right, because as anybody learned with Trump, hey, cater to the conservative people and watch stuff happen. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, you want to make some money, let's cater to the conservative people, So I think they were smart in that way as far as a business sense goes.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So I think So piggybacking on and agreeing with you is that my takeaway after now, like I said, having like heard multiple sides, most specifically, I've heard lots of the Christian side, which have been just straight calling some even. I mean, here's some of the problem with getting on social media and just yelling at stuff. And I mean, some people are saying this is demonic, and I mean, sure, yeah, if you say but listen, to her point, it doesn't say conservative Christian dads, real women of America. It says conservative. And so, like she said, a conservative is not necessarily Christian. Mm-hmm. There is in the conservative party, there's libertarians which say do anything, smoke anything you want, do any kind of thing you want, and you should just be 100% free will no matter what you do. It don't matter. So that's a part of the conservative. Most of the time, they're lumped in with conservatives. There's alt-right and blah, blah, blah. All these little subgroups in conservative, and also Christians, which like you said, you made the point that even some that are more, they aren't conservative Christians in the fact that they, to me, I don't really differentiate. It's, if you're a Christian, there's born again Christians and then there's not. So the other part I've seen with this is like the Reformed Christians and the Protestant or the charismatic. They all have schisms and delineations on everything. Listen, right is right, wrong is wrong, saved is saved, Christian is Christian, conservative is not Christian. Christian is its own category. Right. A follower of Jesus would say, I wanted to pose this to you. I, being your husband, know how good you look in a bikini. And, but what if I approached you, let's say I was, falling away, and I tried to convince you to pose in this calendar. Like you said, I mean, like, I wonder how these conversations went with the wife being approached. And then,
because some of these women are married, right?
Yeah, I don't know all of the stories of all the women,
right? And
also, like, to the point, I think about half of them, like some of the photos I've seen of some of the women. It wasn't all. I think there's only a couple that were in bikinis,
right?
But most of them were still sort of seductive. One of them was in like an apron in the kitchen cooking, and with the beer in the background, stuff like that. So, but anyway, what would be, what would your thought process be if I said, pose for this calendar? I think you should do it.
Of course, it would just be a hard no for me. There really would be no discussion. Like, you may bring it up, and then I would be like, okay, if you ever bring this up again, like we're gonna have some problems. It would just be a hard no for me. Now, okay. Take me out of it, all right? And we're not talking about me. I'm not in here. A lot of, again, these conservative people, they, may or may not be Christians, okay? It would be harder for me to say that not that they're not a Christian, but they would be a compromising Christian if they were wanting this, if the husbands were okay with this, if the wives were okay with this, whatever, okay? So
it would be a joint compromise between
the two,
compromising Christians if they're married,
or if she just really wanted to do it and she's like, I'm doing this whether you want me to do this or not. A lot of people live their life that way, or she just did it because he wanted her to do it. You know what I mean? Because some people don't have a backbone to stand on. Yeah. Even in their own relationships and in their own marriages, And so, but to kind of try to go back to what I was trying to say was, a lot of men would be like, yeah, my wife is hot. Go ahead, girl. Let the world see how gorgeous you are, and you know what I mean? Like, like for some people who don't have the lens of a biblical lens to look at life and to look at making decisions and stuff, it would feel good for them to have their wife, be in this or something, and be,
to be nominated.
Yeah, I mean, it says in the smallest of the print on the cover, it says featuring the most beautiful conservative women in America. Okay.
Yeah.
So, and so now you're labeled that. Oh my gosh, my wife is labeled that. Like, oh, that's awesome. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I can see, again, for somebody who's not either not a Christian at all, or they're just a super compromised Christian, that this could be exciting.
Yeah, and so I see all sides. I see where the Christian, social media influencers are like just straight up like blasting these women, and the company and the people involved, and I understand all that. And
well, we understand where they're coming from, but it's not okay. Christians like that need to slam the brakes. I mean, y'all need to chill. Like Jesus would not approach these people this way, that way,
Right. I like to just look at an event and sort of see all of the topics from the different fringe groups of how they're discussing it, but
how they react to it.
But I think the takeaway from this is mostly that this isn't a Christian calendar. It isn't supposed to be a Christian women calendar. Like I think like Paul Washer, who's a lot of people have heard him preach. A lot of his sermons have went super viral and stuff like that. But I shared with you a video of his on being, I guess, like beautiful women. Like you can be beautiful, like so stunningly. Women can be sometimes so stunningly beautiful that no matter how modest they are, their beauty is going to shine through.
Right.
And they're going to be, they enter a room and it's like all the men in the room are like, she's beautiful.
Yeah.
But if she's so beautiful that if she enters the room and she at all like has any desire, I guess, to be a little bit seductive, then all of the men are going to they're going to change their tune and say, oh, she's sexy instead of she's beautiful.
Right.
Even if it's inwardly towards a man.
Right.
So a woman controls that. Women control
how you present
the
yourself.
perception of how they are presenting themselves to men. And that's why it's like, yeah, you could just, say, we're celebrating the beauty of women in this, scenario. But at the end of the day, like you said, it's a woman's responsibility to understand beauty and then understand sensuality, because there's a big difference between the two. You can be 100% beautiful, celebrate your womanness and your beauty, and then also understand that if you deviate on some things, you're going to actually cause men to stumble.
And the thing about that, women, okay, is be your beautiful self every day. When you're out grocery shopping, when you go to church, when you're picking the kids up from school, whatever, okay? Be your beautiful self. But most women, at some point, we want to be a little sensual. You know what I'm saying? You can do that with your husband. You can do that in the privacy of your own home when the kids are spending the night with grandma. You know what I mean? Like, you still have the opportunity
put on an outfit for your husband.
And you don't have to do that for the rest of the world to see. You don't have to do that and be a stumbling block for other men, again, and now I'm talking more to Christian women, because other women may not agree with me or understand where I'm coming from, and that's fine. So I guess I'm not just talking to women, I'm talking to Christian women. And I would say too that a lot of the people that I think maybe get upset, I don't know, like I think some people are conservative and they think that they're Christian because they're conservative.
Right.
But
American conservatism would label themselves Christian.
Exactly, but then they're really not, because nothing about their life, represents that in any way, represents Jesus. Like, literally, if you are putting the label Christian on yourself, you need to be a representation of Jesus Christ, who he is, what he has done for us. You know what I mean? And if your life doesn't align with that, then I would do some serious soul searching as to whether or not you truly are a Christian, which means to be Christ-like.
Yeah, because we like the culture, the way it has grown and adapted with social media, and just everything being visual. Like we like, so some of the talking heads that are just like bashing, I mean, they're right in the point that like we are pornographic culture now. And so we're desensitized to it. And, so we, as men, we're visually stimulated, people, or beings, we have to guard our hearts, and we have to, make choices daily to turn from things that are evil. And, we still will watch a movie that might be rated R or something, but I tell her if there's any turning in this movie, I'm turning it off. If there's anything that, we watched a movie last night, and I told her if there's a turn, it didn't say that there were, sexual stuff in it, so that's why we watched it. But I'll turn it off in a second, and I'll just walk away and say, all right, I'm not watching it. It's over. I don't know where I was going with that.
You were just talking about how we're desensitized to the, you know what I mean? Like in the 50s, women's bathing suits covered them from their neck to their thighs, you know? And,
so that was it. So some people that are defending this, that are conservative, are like, you guys that are calling this out, calling this demonic and pornographic or silly. They want, and then they're taking the extreme and saying, so I guess you want, women to wear burqas, and all this kind of stuff, taking it to the extreme, which no, it's not the case. Christian women need to have modesty in mind, at the forefront, putting together a wardrobe or, attire.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing too, again, if anybody that is involved in the making and the creating and designing and whatever of this calendar, if they claim to be a Christian person, there are scriptures in the Bible that talk about, woe to him who causes somebody to stumble, and so no, we don't have to be, dressed in burqas and completely covered up, because that's legalistic and, kind of on a whole nother, end of the spectrum. But yeah, it's our responsibility. It's my responsibility as a Christian, okay, to not cause other people to stumble, okay? Now, I'm not going to be perfect in that. Of course, I'm going to make mistakes. Of course, I'm going to screw up. It's human nature, okay? But one thing that I can do is make sure that when I walk out of this house, I'm dressed appropriately, and it's probably the easiest thing to do, And then on the flip side of that, like you said, men are more visually stimulated, and some men are going to struggle more with that than others, whatever, your responsibility as a Christian man to not partake into stuff like this, that's a decision and a choice that you have to make on a daily basis.
Yeah. Because it's, like the, I guess the conservative or the, right wing mindset is like, I'm not committing adultery. I'm not I'm not, sleeping with these women. But, that's where Jesus took it to the other level. And he said, if you look at a woman with lust in your heart, you've already committed adultery. Right. So that's where the line's drawn for the Christian, for the believer, is that it's not just the actual acting out of sin. It's the internal motives and the desires. That's what Jesus cuts through all of the fluff. Yeah. And he gets right down to the motives and to the innermost why we do what we do. American culture, Christianity it's not biblical Christianity. Biblical Christianity looks to put Jesus first in everything, whether that be culture or counterculture, or in line with culture or counterculture. It is aligning oneself with what Jesus said, did, taught, and what scriptures teach about the nature and the attributes of God. If anything's out of alignment with that, that's where we need to pivot towards what scripture teaches, not what culture teaches, not what someone who professes right wing or conservatism. So no, even within Christian circles, it's wild. There's trad wives and get jacked for Jesus dudes and all the things that are it's just, there's just wild cultures out here that are using Christianity as part of their marketing and talking points and all that anyway. So I think we've harped on this long enough, and we're probably offended every group that there is, so welcome to the channel. Subscribe.
Yeah.
Follow us if you're listening on a podcast.
Yeah.
And we're going to close it out here because we try to keep these with probably about 30 minutes or less. But we're going to close it out with someone shared it with me on Facebook that there is a after school Satan club. And this is a nationwide thing, but this particular one was coming to Tennessee.
Nashville.
This one's in Nashville. Chimney Rock Elementary.
Nashville.
I'll read it. I'll throw it up on the screen, but I'll also read it for those who are listening on a podcast. It says, "Hey kids, let's have some fun after school Satan club. The Satanic Temple is a non-theistic religion that views Satan as a literary figure who represents a metamorphical construct of rejecting tyranny and championing the human mind and spirit. After School Satan Club does not attempt to convert children to any religious ideology. Instead, the Satanic Temple supports children to think for themselves. All after-school Satan clubs are based on activities centered around the 7 fundamental tenets and emphasize a scientific, rationalist, non-superstitious worldview." This is at public school libraries, and they're trying to infiltrate as many schools as possible. And we just wanted to take a minute here to talk about this. When it was shared to me, I told the gentleman who shared it, I said, nothing surprises me anymore.
Mm-hmm. So I've heard about this like probably 10, 15 years ago. But at the time, it was just like they were just trying to start something and they were just trying to figure out how can we do something like this. And now it's happening. Like, so whatever, they've made progress since I originally heard about this. And now it is legit happening. This is not the first school to have it. It was just, one not too far from where we live. Yeah. So it's interesting, this one, because we talked about it a little bit already. Mm-hmm. And America is all about freedom
of religion.
And freedom of religion is literally why people came over here. The
foundation of America
is freedom of religion.
Yeah.
So I'm not mad at the fact, these people have the freedom to do this. Okay? Mm-hmm. If I want the freedom to go to church and go to my activities and, and do what I do, okay, then I'm honestly not, I can't be mad at this. That's very hypocritical.
It's part of a free country to have these kinds of things.
Yeah. On the flip side of that, okay, what I know about Satan, there's like a little cartoonish, again, he'll throw it up, but there's like a little cartoonish like picture of Satan or whatever. There's nothing cartoony about Satan, okay?
Yeah.
Like the real deal. Like, I don't know if these people actually think Satan really exists or not.
It's almost satirical, it seems.
Exactly. Yeah. And if our local public school system allowed something like this, I probably would take my kids out of that school. Because to me, it's not a joke, it's not cute, it's not funny. Yeah. Now, everything that they say that they're about, like if you were to take After School Satan Club out of it and name it anything else, oh my gosh, like, okay, that's kind of cool. That's interesting. I want my kids to be free thinkers,
Right. Essentially, also, it's a bit deceptive, mm-hmm. Obviously, go figure. A satanic club is a bit deceptive. Go figure.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, no, I mean, so we talked about this on a few. We kind of fleshed this one out off camera over the last week or so. We talked about different things mm-hmm. with it, but yeah, I mean, it says championing the human mind and spirit. But see, this is where like the serpent deceived and said, you can know right and wrong. It's basically, and the deception of Satan is that we become our own gods. We become mm-hmm. gods. We are gods. We don't need God. So that's sort of where I think also even like there's a little bit of where arts and the fine arts and all those kinds of things they can glorify God, or it can go astray and it can be oh, you're angelic, you're amazing, and it becomes all self-centered, and like putting me up on a pedestal. So like as you said, we talked about it, that like where freedom in a free country, these things are bound to happen and occur, mm-hmm. and all different religions can try to have their way. I think why there's outcry and controversy is because in a lot of areas Christianity Christian clubs or after anything to do with God or Christian have been removed from school, and something like this has been allowed.
Yeah.
It's being allowed in and at school, even though it's after school, not during school.
And it does say that this activity is not endorsed or sponsored by the Memphis Shelby County Schools. But the school is endorsing it by allowing them to use their facilities.
Yeah.
So that, I mean, maybe they're not sponsored, but they're not putting any money towards it. But you're definitely endorsing it by allowing them to use the school. Yeah, but it also looks like, because we were kind of trying to figure out, like, the timing, it's like 4:30 to 5:30, so they're probably doing some other kind of after-school program, and then this is something that they're, that they're doing for, like, that last hour before a lot of parents can actually get there to pick up their kids and stuff, so,
yeah. So while we are in the camp of, like I said, free country, different religions can have their own thing, blah, 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 we said, I mean, definitively that if our county school approached us with this, it presented it at some board meeting and said, we're looking at the idea of bringing this school program, we would oppose it vehemently. We would write letters, do all the things.
Yeah.
So we're not like endorsing it, but we're just saying, like, in a free country, this is,
Yep.
and like, and I'm sure they, like, again, playing advocate. I hate to even say the term
devil's advocate.
Devil's advocate is that I'm sure they had to fight and they had to work and they had to go through a lot to actually get into schools, and when they do just like Christians now have to fight and tooth and nail to get many times things implemented and or allowed for Christian clubs and Christian things to meet. So but we would oppose it 100%, and we would likely pull our kids out of a school system that had this in there and homeschool or send to private school or Christian school or whatever the case may be. So, but yeah, I mean, any like closing thoughts on that topic? I think that's all we really want to say about it, is that we just wanted to present it that this is happening, and
like they have the freedom to do this, and we have the freedom to not participate. They have the freedom to do that, and we have the freedom to pull our kids, if this was our district or our area.
Right. We still have those freedoms, at least in America, where we can choose the schools we choose to send our kids to. If that were taken away, then we maybe wouldn't have this. We wouldn't be as blasé blah about this. But anyway, I think that'll wrap up this episode. So if you guys are enjoying it, like I said, do you hit the subscribe if it's on YouTube, and follow on all the other podcast platforms. We're thankful for each of you for watching. Share it out with others, and drop comments on any platform that allows comments. Let us know your thoughts on these topics of the calendar and this Satan club,
and anything else that you might want us to talk about.
Some ideas of things that or questions you would have for us individually or as a couple. Shoot them down in the comment below. That's all we got till next time. Gospel Evangelism out.